The 2026 World Cup has a problem. And no, it's not Argentina. It's Ecuador. Because while the football world keeps talking about the usual giants, something dangerous has been growing quietly in South America. A team nobody wants to take seriously until it's already too late. And honestly, that's exactly how Ecuador likes it. Because this isn't hype anymore. This isn't another golden generation people talk about for clicks. This is a real football project, built on discipline, elite talent, and one terrifying weapon: defense. Not just good defense, possibly the best defensive unit heading to the World Cup. And that should scare everybody, because football history keeps teaching us the same lesson. Dark horses never announce themselves before they arrive. Ghana in 2010, Costa Rica in 2014, Croatia in 2018, Morocco in 2022. Nobody believed in them until the tournament started. And Ecuador in 2026, they might be next. Because this team doesn't play with fear, they play with conviction. And the numbers are becoming impossible to ignore. 17 matches unbeaten since 2024. Second place in South American qualifiers. Above Brazil, above Colombia, and only behind world champions Argentina. That is not luck. That is power. But to understand why Ecuador suddenly feels so dangerous, you need to understand where this story began. Because Ecuador were never supposed to be here. For decades, they lived in the shadows of South American football. Brazil had history, Argentina had legends, Uruguay had trophies, Ecuador had hope and heartbreak. Since the 1960s, qualification campaigns kept ending the same way. Close, but never enough. The World Cup felt distant, almost impossible. Then everything changed in 2002. For the first time ever, Ecuador qualified for football's biggest stage, and suddenly, the impossible became real. Their debut wasn't perfect. Italy beat them. Mexico beat them too. But then came the breakthrough: Croatia. A 1-0 victory. Ecuador's first ever World Cup win. That result changed something inside the country. The world stopped seeing Ecuador as tourists, and Ecuador stopped seeing themselves as outsiders. Then came Germany 2006, and this is where the identity truly started forming. Fearless football, aggressive football, South American football with personality. They beat Poland, destroyed Costa Rica, reached the knockout stages, and even though England eventually ended the dream, Ecuador left with something more important than qualification: respect. But the real transformation? That happened years later. Because between 2018 and Qatar 2022, Ecuador changed completely. They stopped being fragile, stopped being easy to break, and became something entirely different. A team nobody enjoyed playing against. In Qatar, they made history immediately. Opening game, host nation, pressure everywhere, and Ecuador became the first team ever to defeat a World Cup host in the opening match. Then came the Netherlands, and honestly, Ecuador deserved more. That match told the world something important. This team could compete with anybody. They didn't leave Qatar with a trophy, but they left with belief. And sometimes, belief changes everything. Then came the Byron Castillo controversy. 3-point deduction, doubts everywhere. People saying Ecuador's road to 2026 was already finished. And maybe that pressure became their greatest motivation. Because instead of collapsing, they exploded. 11 matches unbeaten. Only 1 goal conceded during that run. Read that again. 1. That's not normal. That's elite. And behind that transformation stands a generation unlike anything Ecuador has produced before. Let's start with the heart of the team: Moisés Caicedo. Because Caicedo isn't just Ecuador's best player. He might genuinely be the best defensive midfielder in Europe. And no, that's not exaggeration. Watch him play and you understand immediately. He runs endlessly, wins duels, kills counterattacks before they begin, and somehow still finds the energy to create chances and push forward. Chelsea didn't just buy a midfielder, they found a leader, a player who already wears responsibility like a veteran. And what makes Moisés terrifying is simple: he keeps evolving. People once saw him as just a destroyer. Now, he controls games, scores goals, creates chances, leads dressing rooms. And whenever Ecuador need him most, he appears. That's rare. That's leadership. But as brilliant as Caicedo is, Ecuador's true superpower lives elsewhere: the defense. And honestly, this backline is absurd. William Pacho, Piero Hincapié, Pervis Estupiñán, Joel Ordóñez. That doesn't sound like a dark horse defense. That sounds like a nightmare. William Pacho especially feels unreal, because right now, there's a genuine argument that he belongs among the world's elite defenders. At PSG, he became indispensable. Luis Enrique trusts him completely. immediately. And when you watch him defend, something strange happens. They stop looking world-class. Harry Kane, Salah, elite forwards suddenly become quiet. Because Pacho doesn't just defend, he erases. And then there's Hincapié, a player who perfectly represents modern football. Versatile, aggressive, intelligent, equally comfortable as a center back or fullback. At Leverkusen, he helped build history. At Arsenal, he looks like he belongs immediately. And with Ecuador, he becomes even better. Together, Hincapié and Pacho have turned Ecuador into one of the hardest teams on earth to break down. That chemistry changes tournaments. Because World Cups aren't always won by the prettiest football, they're won by teams that survive pressure. And Ecuador are built for survival. Don't make the mistake of thinking this team only defends, because they can hurt you too. Gonzalo Plata finally found consistency. Kendry Páez looks destined for superstardom. And then there's Ener Valencia, still here, still leading, still carrying the pride of an entire nation. For him, 2026 feels personal. One final World Cup, one final mission, and maybe one final miracle. That emotional edge matters. Because football isn't played only with tactics, it's played with belief, and Ecuador have plenty of it. The only real concern? Goals. Too many draws, too many matches decided by tiny margins. That remains the unanswered question. Can Ecuador turn defensive dominance into knockout victories? Because if they solve that one problem, then this conversation changes completely, and maybe that's why the world should pay attention, because dark horses never look dangerous until they arrive, and Ecuador, they're arriving with confidence, with elite talent, and with absolutely nothing to fear. And honestly, that combination has shocked World Cups before. It might shock this one too.